3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay. So, Avi, what are we doing today?
Yeah, so the purpose of this video is to combine two of our interests. For Anand, it's been an interest of his that he's had since university, and this is a more recent interest for me, which is personality type. And so basically, we're going to be looking at the book by Dante Alighieri, Dante's Inferno, and we're basically gonna be seeing how the two ideologies kind of work together. Apparently, Carl Jung has been said to have gained a lot of inspiration from Dante's Inferno, and so
Not inspiration, it's more so that he recognizes that the types that he has observed are similar to the types that Dante observed.
Okay. Okay.
And that are found throughout the Divine Comedy.
Got it. Yeah, so we're basically gonna go through it, and kind of like see if there is anything that we can kind of draw from either or. I think that I'm gonna learn something new, and hopefully Anand may learn something new, and we all learn something. Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing first is reading the first canto, and we can just go line by line, our reaction to it as we go along. So yeah. Who wants to read?
If you want to read, since
Okay.
you have more experience.
Okay. So this is Canto I, and the summary that is given at the top of the canto for every canto is, and this will just give you a summary of what this episode is going to be like as well. So it says, "The Voyager narrator, astray by night in a dark forest, morning and the sunlit hill, 3 beasts that impede his ascent, the encounter with Virgil, who offers his guidance and an alternative path through 2 of the 3 realms the Voyager must visit." So the 2 realms that is spoken of are Inferno and Purgatorio, and the reason why Virgil can't help Dante travel through all 3 of the realms is because Virgil is unfortunately cast into hell because of the fact that he lived before Christianity, and so that automatically makes him a sinner. Because if you weren't a Christian, then, you know, it's like you're either with us or against us type of deal. So yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's like when you go to like a college or something, and they like they build a new building for like only the sophomores, and you're a junior, so you can't like go to that building because it's only for like sophomores.
Dude, that's actually a hella good analogy.
Yeah. Because that's actually what happened to us, so, you know.
Speaking from experience.
Feels bad. Okay, but I actually, I've thought that it was interesting that, just from that one paragraph, they noted that it's, you know, the realms that the Voyager must visit. Could you talk about, like, why there is this kind of, onus on Dante? Or is it more so just, like, the way that the narrator is choosing to describe this as something that is kind of, like, unavoidable?
Well, okay. The main reason why Dante actually goes on this journey is because he is essentially helped by this chick called Beatrice who lives in heaven. Um, no, she's not just a random person. She's actually like Dante's like dead unrequited love.
Okay.
So like she's been dead for like 10 years, and he basically uses her as like a a figure of aspiration.
Okay.
And it's basically Beatrice who sends Virgil to Dante, and throughout the Inferno and the Purgatorio, Beatrice will like help Dante if anything happens. So, like later on, when we get to the city of Dis, the people of Dis shut their gates and prevent Dante and Virgil from entering the city. So basically Beatrice has to send like an angel to like force the sinners to open the gates, because like they are
Okay.
yeah, they can't, the angels are OP.
I guess we can get into more when we reach those parts, but I'm curious as to how Beatrice has this godlike power of summoning angels.
Yeah.
But okay, I think we can probably start now.
Yeah. I gotta drink some water first, though. Alright, so it begins. When I had journeyed half of our life's way, I found myself within a shadowed forest, for I had lost the path that does not stray. Ah, it is hard to speak of what it was, that savage forest, dense and difficult, which even in recall renews my fear. So bitter, death is hardly more severe. But to retell the good discovered there, I'll also tell the other things I saw. I cannot clearly say how I had entered the wood. I was so full of sleep just at the point where I abandoned the true path. But when I had reached the bottom of a hill, it rose along the boundary of the valley that had harassed my heart with so much fear. I looked on high and saw its shoulders clothed already by the rays of that same planet which serves to lead men straight along all roads. At this my fear was somewhat quieted, for through the night of sorrow I had spent, the lake within my heart felt terror present. And just as he who, with exhausted breath, having escaped from sea to shore, turns back to watch the dangerous waters he has quit, so did my spirit, still a fugitive, turn back to look intently at that pass that never has let any man survive. I let my tired body rest a while. So I think that's a good place to stop.
Okay.
And the first things I want to take note of is the nature of Dante's sort of predicament, which is that, to me, it seems like as though he is experiencing trauma. Like, there's like a PTSD nature to the way how he even just talks about the situation that he's in right now.
Right.
Like, he says, at this my fear was somewhat quieted, like in regards to being able to see the sun at the top of the hill. And the hill in this metaphor is actually clarified later on to be Purgatorio. But it doesn't really make sense because Purgatorio is an island and Dante is in a forest.
Mm-hmm.
and Purgatorio, the entire mountain is the island. So like it's not like as though there's like some forest chilling anywhere near, like, you know.
So Purgatorio is an island, and uh, and what was the other one?
The other one was the shadowed forest, which Dante's in right now, and like the hill that he reaches, and like sees the light at the top of the hill, and he's like,
yeah. I was gonna ask about that. So that is Purgatorio.
like it's meant to represent Purgatorio.
Okay.
But like literally it cannot be Purgatorio because like Purgatorio is a mountain island, and
Right.
there would be no way a forest could be there.
Right. So when it says it rose along the boundary of the valley, does that mean that there is a dip in the the geography, and simultaneously at the edge of that valley dip, there is a hill. So it's like a there's like a is that what they're saying with that?
So what I sort of imagine is so I imagine that there's the forest and then there's the hill,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like the hill rises along the boundary of a valley.
Right.
Specifically the valley that had harassed Dante's heart with so much fear.
Uh-huh.
So I guess the forest is like a valley.
Okay.
And that actually
So
makes sense because
so the hill is actually it okay, yeah, I can see now. The hill is makes up the valley.
yeah.
Okay.
Wow, I should mute my computer.
Yeah. We can obviously edit out this. I don't know.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay.
I was saying that because
I also just wanted to note, not only like two things. So first of all, I think it is trauma, but I also feel like as though, like for example, he mentions the word fear at least 3 times. He says, which even in recall renews my fear, and then later on he says,
at this my fear was somewhat quieted, for through the night of sorrow I had spent, the lake within my heart felt terror present.
yeah,
Which is like,
and above that it says, that had harassed my heart with so much fear. So it's like this constant, mentioning of the fear, that he faces. I think he even says it one more time, I want to say.
so the reason why I say it's like PTSD is because like even in saying at this my fear was somewhat quieted, even when he's like talking about like how his fear has been quieted by seeing the rays of light at the top of the hill, like he still is being drawn back into that like negative thought of like for through the night of sorrow I had spent, the lake within my heart felt terror present. It's like he's like continuously like perseverating on like his fear.
Yeah, but do you know what I think is a really interesting thing? That I only know because you forced me to read this. It's in the introduction of the novel. There is actually an excerpt that is mentioned, which cites Hegel and his kind of understanding of like poetry, and I think that in a lot of ways Dante writes this from his perspective. Would I be correct in that? Like it is his.
Wait, do you think that Dante read Hegel? Because I think that Hegel came after Dante.
No. I don't. I'm not saying that it's influenced by this, but it's a similar idea. But what I mean to say is that Hegel writes, in the introduction, he writes, the Hegelian poet can gather ultimate energy from only one sure fount, the fear, the absolute fear of death. A wood so bitter, death is hardly more severe. And I mean, that's the quote from the Inferno. They actually, yeah, it's literally like from what we just read. So, yeah, no.
Very relevant.
Yeah, very relevant. And then, I think that, he writes later, Hegel's formulation of that fear couples it, of course, with service and obedience, functions Dante fulfills most immediately in relation to Virgo and Beatrice, and ultimately to his God. And then there's a quote, I'm assuming either from Dante's Inferno or from Hegel, where it says, without the discipline of service and obedience, fear remains formal and does not spread over the whole known reality of existence. Without formative activity shaping the thing, fear remains inward and mute, and conscientiousness does not become objective for itself. Should conscientiousness shape and form the thing without the initial state of absolute fear, then it is merely a vain and futile mind of its own. It has endured not absolute fear, but merely some slight anxiety, negative reality, has remained external to it. Its substance has not been through and through infected thereby. Since the entire content of its natural consciousness has not tottered and shaken, it is still inherently a determinate mode of being. Having a mind of its own is simply stubbornness, a type of freedom which does not get beyond the attitude of bondage. As little as the pure form can become its essential nature, so little is that form considered as extending over particulars, a universal formative activity, an absolute notion. It is rather a piece of cleverness which has mastery within a certain range, but not over the universal power nor the entire objective reality.
So, could you say that conscientiousness, in a way, is like the first, like, oftentimes one's first time being faced with fear?
Well, I think it's actually the opposite. I think that he's saying that absolute fear and sheer terror brings about a level of consciousness that is necessary in reaching that state. It's like an awakening of sorts. But to only
I don't
have...
think we're saying different things.
Well, but you're saying that the order of their relationship is reversed. And I think that he also calls to mind the idea of, like, or not the idea, but the potential of there being a fear that is not completely absolute. It is
right, like a fear that
it is
goes inward.
Yeah. It's a fear that remains inward and mute.
Yeah.
And consciousness does not become objective for itself.
So it's kind of like when you like bottle up negative emotion.
Yeah, and I think it's also like when the fear is not an objective fear. It's a fear that is born of within.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's not an objective fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a subjective fear. Yeah.
Because like the whole idea of consciousness is like being, conscious of your objective external reality, or your objective internal reality. I think that the two are, very related.
Is there such thing as an objective internal reality?
I mean, isn't that the entire...
Wouldn't it just be the subjective? Because like it's literally about the subject.
Well, I mean, so it's subjective in I think that everything is subjective. Whatever you perceive, there is this
right. But in the formulation of Carl Jung's psychological types, it's basically between two forces, the object and the subject, right? And like each
Yeah.
function is either facing towards the subject, which means it's introverted, or facing towards the object, which means that it's extroverted.
Yeah. Well, so look at this here. If it has endured not absolute fear, but merely some slight anxiety, negative reality has remained external to it. Its substance has not been through and through infected thereby. So I think that when the fear becomes absolute within, it infects, the individual, and the negative reality is no longer external but internal as well. And in that fear that you have, your internal world does become objective in a sense.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, like he literally says, "So did my spirit, still a fugitive, turn back to look intently at that past that never has let any man survive."
so when he turns back, what do you think he's looking back at?
Well, okay, when I read a alternative translation. Oh yeah, by the way, this is translated by Alan Mandelbaum, and yeah, he's the bomb, you could say. No, but like this is like a really good translation. And so, but there's another translation I believe that's written by, I think it's Seamus Heaney. I don't know if it's, I think it has to be Seamus Heaney. But like basically he describes it as like the like basically the castaway, right? That's what it's called. Like someone who's like stuck on an island,
Okay. Yeah.
like stranded on an island.
Yeah.
Basically the person who has survived, who has like reached the shore.
Uh-huh. Like survivor's guilt?
No. He describes it as like turning your head in the sand and like watching the waves. Like, he says literally the combers. And so like it is sort of like a cinematic effect, where like you're in the POV of the person,
Mhm.
like, and you can see only the water and the ground.
Yeah.
And the water is like coming toward you. So like it's almost like it's the wave is metaphorical of like the fear that you experienced.
Yeah. Dude, why does that sound so familiar? I feel like I literally read that.
Because you did read it.
Is it from the introduction?
No. When you read the Inferno that was written by 21 contemporary poets, his is the first canto. His is actually the first 3 cantos.
Oh.
Yeah, he translates the first 3, and yeah, there are some other significant poets.
I mean, it's also like literally here too.
Yeah, no, it's translated here, but I think in the other translation, it's like a lot more vivid, the like the image, and I think that it evokes like the fear much more concretely.
Right. What do you think the night of sorrow he spends represents? Also, I think it's interesting that he discusses that there's this path that does not stray, and yet he lost, he had lost that path.
Yeah.
I think that is
really, it's a really interesting characterization of a path.
Yeah.
Because like the path that does not stray, it implies that like the walker has the ability to stray.
Exactly.
Like the implication is that like the walker strays, but the path does not.
Yeah, and he even goes on to say, I cannot clearly say how I had entered the wood. I was so full of sleep just at the point where I abandoned the true path.
Yeah.
So I feel like when he says that, it's like he's almost like not even fully conscious of his abandoning the true path.
Yeah.
Like it's like he's sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very like a psychological thing that happens where it feels like you are just going through the motions of your life and you don't realize just how far you are from what you want to be doing. And so yeah, that really is a very good line.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. Like, your analysis can be better. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you pointed that out.
Okay.
So, shall we keep going?
I just want to like maybe work through like the last bit of it. So he kind of takes a break.
Yeah.
I let my tired body rest a while. Is there any significance in that?
It's
I guess it's to denote how
time passing.
No, to just kind of show how he has even though he's been in full of sleep, he has been exhausted from this aimless straying.
Yeah.
And that has it has tired him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's oftentimes what happens when you do kind of reach that point of realization, is that you realize just how much you were like straining and pushing yourself, that you don't even realize how tired you were because you have been like on the move without rest.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can move on.
Moving again, I tried the lonely slope, my firm foot always on the one below. Or sorry, my firm foot always was the one below. And almost where the hillside starts to rise, look there, a leopard, very quick and lithe, a leopard covered with a spotted hide. He did not disappear from sight, but stayed. Indeed, he so impeded my ascent that I had often to turn back again. The time was the beginning of the morning. The sun was rising now in fellowship with the same stars that had escorted it when divine love first moved those things of beauty. So,
yeah, that was a lot.
This is a reference to Dante's conception of the heavens. And it actually incorporates all of the planets, or not all of the planets, but if you turn to this page in your book, it's like 3
got it.
4, yeah. So like you can see that the heavens basically start with the moon, then Mercury, Venus, the sun, then Mars, then Jupiter, then Saturn, then the fixed stars, then what's called the primum mobile, and then finally the Empyrean. So
and this is what he's referencing?
Yeah, so like the divine love is, I guess, like
move those things of beauty. That's like the movement of the sun and the stars.
Yeah, like the divine love is like the divine order of of like the universe.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because if you replace God and like the religious component with something that is like more based in nature, like believing that you are a part of like a greater like life force.
Right.
I think that is like very similar to what Dante.
Right. It's like a supernatural force.
Or it's just a natural force.
Oh yeah, that's true. Right.
But actually that my belief that that's what Dante believes is actually wrong, because when you get to Paradiso, he
he's a flat earther.
It just goes in a direction that I did not think it would.
He took a turn for the...
Like, I thought that, like, it would be, because, like, in hell, it's, like, where all the sinners go.
Uh-huh.
Then Purgatorio is where, like, all the, like, people who are not as shitty go. And then, like, you would think that heaven would be where all the, like, chill people are. And, like, you would get, like, examples of, like...
Right.
Good. But, nah. It's basically just Dante, like, flexing hard. Like, he... yeah.
I mean, isn't Paradiso, like, the part where it's the last part, which is fraud? And... Or is that in the Inferno?
That is in the Inferno, yes.
Okay.
And the last one is actually treacherous fraud.
No, yeah. Oh, so there's treacherous fraud and family fraud.
No. Treacherous fraud is the one that includes killing family members.
I see.
Or betraying family members.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess we've discussed this because I have a little bit of experience with reading this, but I guess just for the people who will watch this, the significance of the leopard that is mentioned as being on the hill is supposed to represent this obstacle that kind of impedes Dante's ascent. And I guess, like, the significance maybe of the part where it says the time was the beginning of the morning, the sun was rising now in fellowship with the same stars that had escorted it when divine love first moved those things of beauty. Maybe that's supposed to note, like, the passage of time and how this effort is kind of futile, exercise.
Well, okay, we can actually go to the notes in the back. So the footnote says, the world was believed to have been created in spring, with the sun in the constellation of Aries, and Dante's own voyage takes place in the springtime.
Got it. Okay, yeah, so this is mostly to set the scene.
Yeah.
And I guess symbolically, springtime is an apt season to begin a journey.
Yeah, because it's like the start.
Right, it's the start of the season.
It's the start and the end.
Yeah.
kind of.
And it also, if we were to, like, you know, take it back to the podcast that I was telling you about, like, wintering, like, if you're coming out of, like, a wintering, then it's spring. But, I mean, I think that it could also be the juxtaposition of how it is springtime, you know, but within it's, like, you know, it's a desolate and terrifying place for Dante.
No, I think what you said about coming out of wintering was
Okay.
apt.
Okay, cool.
But what were you saying about the leopard?
I mean, they just note its nature as being very quick and lithe, and
also Dante's reaction to it. Like, this is honestly, like, the only time where, like, I feel like he's, like, very, like, playful. Like, he's like, look there, a leopard, very quick and like, there's literally an exclamation mark.
Well, I don't know if the excitement that is, you know, that is trying to be conveyed is that of like, so, you know, like,
he's
positive.
Like drawn into it.
Well, I think it's like he's more so like shitting his pants. He's like, oh fuck, it's a leopard.
He is,
like,
but the thing is, it's, he says, look there.
No.
A leopard very quick and lithe, a leopard covered with a spotted hide. Like, you have, like, a repetition of leopard.
Oh, and there's a bit of a rhyme.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is kind of playful.
Yeah.
I mean, but you could also have created that, you know, that bounciness in order to evoke the lithe nature of the leopard.
I think that's really well put. There is a bounciness. And so what category of sins do you think that this constitutes? There are 3 beasts. And technically, if you look at this right here, there are 4 categories. So, so there's the category of incontinence, there is the category of violence, and then there are the categories of fraud. So, which do you think it is? Do you think it's incontinence? Do you think it's violence? It can't be violence.
Well, I mean, I would say either fraud or incontinence, but I know that fraud is at the end of the journey, so it has to be incontinence.
I wouldn't be so sure. Your rationale for, like, why it's first.
I mean, it makes sense that it's fraud because it's like he is not on his true path, and so, like, but I don't know, like, what fraud it means in this context.
Right, you probably know fraud in a different context.
I mean, even in any context, I don't know if it works.
Well, okay, the only reason why I think fraud is a interesting potential is because there's this element of the leopard having a spotted coat. Like, the leopard sort of presenting a very I guess exterior. And that's similar to fraud in that, like, you're kind of like hiding yourself.
Right, the pelt is like, a little bit sneaky.
Yeah, like, if you think about what the spots are, like, doing, is it's like creating a bunch of eyes, right? Like, that's what the spots sort of look like.
Yeah. That's true.
So that's actually an interesting parallel to that one Greek dude who has like a bunch of eyes.
Oh
He
yeah.
has like
yeah.
1,000 eyes on his body or whatever.
Yeah, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the hide is kind of, it's hiding yourself.
Yeah. So it's an interesting potential, but I think that incontinence.
Well, I mean,
as you say, it's the first one. It's,
right.
It's the like first animal, so it has to be the first category of sin. And you could say that like the almost like infant like response that Dante has to the leopard, like, ooh, look, it's like a child who like sees like a toy, you know, or like a child that literally sees a leopard.
I don't want to read too much into it because I think that they could be.
Well, okay, so incontinence is kind of like sins that are infant-like. Incontinence and I think violence.
I mean, yeah, I guess not really having a sense of autonomy and straying from your path in life could be seen as like infantile because you're not taking responsibility and accountability for yourself. But I just feel like as though when you really get down to the problem of that, it's less to do with the fact that you are, you know, incontinent of your own volition, and it's more so like something has led you astray. At least that's what I feel like. I don't know, maybe people are incontinent just because, but I feel like a lot of the time, I mean, like, I feel like people generally want to live a fulfilling life, and incontinence is, I think, more so a reaction rather than a sin in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually,
and I think that's the reason why it's at the bottom, because it's sort of like the least offensive of the sins. Because
right.
like if you think of sin in a karmic way, like the way how Dr. K talks about karma, like sin is actually very.
It's just the chain
similar.
of events.
Well, it's sort of like the recognition that like a negative action will produce a negative reaction.
Mm.
And so like for example, killing someone creates the negative reaction of like the people whose
you hurt
family,
others.
Yeah, you hurt others. You create.
But incontinence is, I mean, but you could argue that incontinence hurts the people who care about you.
Right, but it's mostly like you.
The damage is mostly done to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the least sinful.
Yeah, I think it is in like a, you know, in terms of your personal blame for it, it's the least sinful for you. But I think that there's the possibility that others have sinned you to lead to that reaction.
Yeah.
And so the sin has a source, and while you may not have the most responsibility or blame in that, I think that it is just as important as the other sins.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can continue.
So I'll just read the last sentence, because it's still the same sentence. It's a long sentence. The time was the beginning of the morning. The sun was rising now in fellowship with the same stars that had escorted it when divine love first moved those things of beauty. So that the hour and the gentle season gave me good cause for hopefulness on seeing that beast before me with its speckled hide. But hope was hardly able to prevent the fear I felt when I beheld a lion. His head held high and ravenous with hunger. Even the air around him seemed to shudder. This lion seemed to make his way against me. And then a she-wolf showed herself. She seemed to carry every craving in her leanness. She had already brought despair to many. The very sight of her so weighted me with fearfulness that I abandoned hope of ever climbing up that mountain slope. Even as he who glories while he gains will, when the time has come to tally loss, laments with every thought and turn despondent, so was I when I faced that restless beast, which even as she stalked me step by step, had thrust me back to where the sun is speechless. While I retreated down to lower ground, before my eyes there suddenly appeared one who seemed faint because of the long silence. When I saw him in that vast wilderness, "Have pity on me," were the words I cried. "Whatever ye may be, a shade, a man," he answered me. "Not man, I once was man. Both my parents came from Lombardy, and both claimed Mantua as native city," both places in Italy. And when I was born, though late, sub Julio, and lived in Rome under the good Augustus, the season of the false and lying gods, I was a poet, and I sang the righteous son of Anchises, who had come from Troy when flames destroyed the pride of Ilium. But why do you return to wretchedness? Why not climb up the mountain of delight, the origin and cause of every joy? And are you then that Virgil, you the fountain that freely pours so rich a stream of speech? I answered him with shame upon my brow. O light and honor of all other poets, may my long study and intense love that made me search your volumes serve me now. You are my master, my author, you, the only one from whom my writing drew the noble style for which I have been honored. You see the beast that made me turn aside. Help me, O famous sage, to stand against her, for she has made my blood and pulses shudder. It is another path you must take, he answered when he saw my tearfulness. If you would leave this savage wilderness, the beast that is the cause of your outcry allows no man to pass along her track, but blocks him even to the point of death. Her nature is so squalid, so malicious, that she can never sate her greedy will. When she has fed, she's hungrier than ever. She mates with many living souls, and shall yet mate with many more, until the greyhound arrives, inflicting painful death on her. That hound will never feed on land or pewter, but find his fare in wisdom, love, and virtue. His place of birth shall be between two felts. He will now restore low-lying Italy, for which the maid Camilla died of wounds, and Nisus, Turnus, and Euryalus. I think we can talk about this last page and a half.
Yeah.
So that was a lot. What we covered was the appearance of the lion and the she-wolf, and then Dante's sort of.
I really like the description of the lion. As like his head held high and ravenous with hunger, even the air around him seemed to shudder. This lion seemed to make his way against me. I think that it's like I think you were right what you said before about how there was a playful nature to the leopard, and it kind of like is they kind of go further with that imagery when they see that when he writes so that the hour and the gentle season gave me good cause for hopefulness on seeing that beast before me with his speckled skin. But hope was hardly able to prevent the fear I felt when I beheld a lion. And so yeah, there is this like, it's like the leopard is like this mini boss that Dante feels equipped to take on, but then that hope is immediately stifled when he sees the lion, and then it seems to just compound on itself when the she-wolf also appears. And I think that the part where it says she seemed to carry every craving in her leanness, she had already brought despair to many. I think that this kind of imagery, it speaks to, like, if I had to guess, I would say that the she-wolf represents the sin of fraudulence, because
I think so too.
because fraudulence does have a kind of despairing quality to it. There is not so much fear as there is just this this like matriculation of sin.
I think that especially the part about how the she-wolf will mate with many others.
Right.
It's sort of like, I think fraudulence
breeds more fraudulence.
Exactly. It
right,
creates
yeah.
more of itself.
Yeah.
And so
there's a duplicative effect.
Yeah. And I like how
yeah.
she's so starved. It's almost like as though she's like spreading the starvation.
Yeah, because like she remains like craving in her leanness, but you know, she mates. She is a restless beast, and it's and you, like you said it again, like she mates with where does it say that?
I think it's on the second page that we read. Yeah, it's right there. She mates with many living souls and shall yet mate with many more.
Yeah, and so there's this insatiableness that cannot be quenched. It's I think that it is a very good description of that feeling of emptiness that you feel. And I think that fraudulence is the attending, or the origin of that. You know, like fraudulence is a deep sense of falseness, of falsehood.
Yeah, or like almost like disconnecting from your humanity.
Right. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, if you think about it, evilness is kind of bred from this disconnect from your humanity.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's I agree with that.
And then we were introduced to Virgil. Did you know it was Virgil when?
Yeah, I assumed.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really want to go into his introduction about like how he was a poet for, you know, the son of Anchises, who came from Troy when flames destroyed the pride of Ilium?
Ilium's like another name for Troy, or yeah.
Okay. So the interesting thing is that he asks, like, why do you return to wretchedness? Why not climb up the mountain of delight, the origin and cause of every joy?
So that's the reason why I think it is likened to Purgatorio, because of what Virgil says right there.
Right.
Just as a side note.
No, yeah, because it's like he is asking him why he isn't there, but simultaneously he is with Dante. You know, like he himself is not there.
Right.
So it's like, you know, it's like the ladder, you know? Like everybody's standing at the bottom of the ladder.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the ladder, right.
Yeah.
The video, the ladder.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And it's also like Dante isn't ready yet to go to Purgatorio. Like,
right.
Like he is literally being stopped by these three beasts that represent three categories of sin.
Yeah.
And so like he has to sort of learn about that.
Yeah.
Learn about
he has to learn how to overcome those.
Yeah. There's this lecture that I was watching online where...
Oh, it said here, her nature is so squalid, so malicious, that she can never sate her greedy will. I do want to point out that I don't know why they chose to make it a she-wolf. It's rather
Well, the she-wolf actually is very interesting because it implies like a motherly quality,
Right.
which actually coincides like really well with like the inverted nature of Inferno and Purgatorio.
Uh-huh.
So like in Inferno, it goes from least sinful to most sinful. So you start off with incontinence, then you go to violence,
Mm-hmm.
then you go to ordinary fraud, and then you go to treacherous fraud. And then in Purgatorio, you start off with the three sins of love, born of love, or rather specifically,
No, yeah, I think I get the point that you're making is that there is a kind of maternal.
Well, okay, so the first three sins in Purgatorio are pride, envy, and wrath. And those are, in my opinion, the like three stages of trauma. So like pride is like the first stage of like digesting your trauma, like letting go of your pride.
Right.
So like that's like sort of
Wait, pride, envy, and what was the last one?
wrath.
I mean, if you think about it, that also parallels the three beasts. Pride is like an internal, thing that you have to overcome, but it's fairly simple. Envy is, something that is a more emotional state. It's a bit more, I think, primal, and aggressive. And then wrath is like destructive, but also it has a kind of it's like wrath has this this need for penitence. Is that the word?
Penitence is like
atonement, right?
Yeah, atoning.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like the sin of wrath has a kind of seeking atonement and retribution. I don't know, maybe I am conflating that, but to me, like, when someone is wrathful, it is because they've been wronged.
Yeah.
And they're seeking justice.
Yeah.
And that like seeking of justice is something that is inherently not going to be satiated in the same way that the she-wolf's hunger will not be satiated, because it's like the wrath is just this vessel of your own hurt, and I think that also like wrath breeds more wrath because of the nature of how you can, the blindness that you have when you are on that path of destruction.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, it is the thing that leads to your ascent to Purgatorio. Or wait, yeah, I don't know. Was it Paradiso?
Paradiso is the last one.
Okay.
So Purgatorio is.
But the hill represents Paradiso.
No, the hill represents Purgatorio.
Oh.
Or Purgatory, I guess.
Right.
Purgatorio is
The name,
but I think they're synonymous.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to yeah. So in Canto 17, of Purgatorio. What you basically have is it's like the end of the day. They're like done with climbing because you can't climb when the sun goes down.
Okay.
Because you'll get lost and end up going down.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like if you try to climb in the night, like you'll just fail. And so basically, like Dante's like, Virgil, let's not waste this time. Tell me about like the sins that we're going to experience tomorrow. And so then Virgil basically gives a summary of like all 7 sins. So the sins of pride, envy, and wrath result from perverted love, and then sloth is defective love, and then avarice, gluttony, and lust are from excessive love of earthly goods. So do you notice the inverted nature of
right.
this categories of sin?
Yeah.
You have perverted love, which is basically like
it's like the kind of distortion of your human nature.
Yeah. Then you have defective, and then
which is kind of like the impotence of your of your will.
Yeah, like kind of like depression.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just like trying to like relate to the description of defective. Defective means it's like defunct, like it's not properly functioning. Yeah, and then the last one was.
And then avarice, gluttony, and lust are excessive love of earthly goods. So that's like
So that's like an overabundance of.
Well, what does that remind you of? Isn't that basically the sins of incontinence?
Yeah. Yeah.
From Inferno.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously this inversion.
Yeah.
Of it. Yeah. I picked up on that.
And like when we read this, like the metaphors that they use to describe pride and like envy and wrath are like they sort of characterize them as like steps, like steps of different levels of essentially like trauma. Like where is it? Yeah, so there's he who through abasement of another hopes for supremacy. He only longs to see his neighbor's excellence cast down. So that's pride. The emphasis there is that he hopes for supremacy. Like
right.
Okay, to return back to no, okay, sorry, my mind is going all over the place. Then
that's that any.
Then there is one who, when he is outdone, fears his own loss of fame, power, honor, favor. His sadness loves misfortune for his neighbor. So that is envy.
Okay.
And like you get this sense that like envy is like the infliction of pain upon someone. Like
right. It's like the leveling, the
No,
Like-
it's like the first step of like creating negative karma. It's like you have been hurt.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's like an equalizing, like, desire to, like, bring someone down to your level.
Yeah. And then there's wrath, which is like the actual, like, going through with the process of hurting someone.
Yeah, that's
Envy is just wanting them to
wrath
be
is a
hurt.
very intimate process.
Yeah.
You are both the judge and executioner.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
This will go quickly. If we do a video like once a week, like, we'll go pretty quickly. Alright. So we talked about Virgil, we talked about the three beasts.
Oh, we got to the Greyhound.
Oh yeah, so we can actually look at the notes in the back, because they are very informative about this part. And so what better way to learn about it than to just read it from the source. Okay, so it's
101.
yeah, no, 105. Or yeah, you can start at 101. Yeah, do you want to read that out loud?
Yeah, okay. The Greyhound of this prophetic passage, the Redeemer who will restore low-lying Italy, has been identified in diverse ways as an ecclesiastic, a secular political figure, as Christ, as Dante himself, as Con Grande della Scala of Verona, Dante's benefactor and an imperial viceroy, and as others. Most probably the term connotes a political prophecy. Almost as probably it foretells and hopes for a Holy Roman Emperor or his viceroy.
And possibly it may refer to Henry VII, who was elected Holy Roman Emperor on November 27, 1308.
So it's like this this kind of character of like redemption and like a force of good, I guess, or at least a force of triumph,
Yeah.
a force of hope.
Or like maybe a force of revolution.
Okay, yeah.
'Cause like,
Well, I probably have to read more in order to, know about that.
well, so if we go to the next part about how the hound will never feed on land or pewter, in the notes, apparently the land or pewter stands for earthly goods and nourishment, and the pewter refers to money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Temporal, what does that mean again? Temporal authority.
Where does it say that?
For Dante elsewhere in his works, temporal authority too has its direct source in God. Does that mean it's like of this world, like a material?
Well, temporal stands for time, right? Let's use the internet.
Relating to worldly as opposed to spiritual affairs, so secular. And you were right, it also relates to time. So we were both kind of right. You were more right, technically.
Well, I mean, the fact that it literally talks about temporal being secular.
But it has a direct source in God is like. I mean, basically, I guess they're noting that it doesn't matter whether you add that spiritual connotation.
Yeah.
Because for Dante,
I don't think it's actually secular. The secular definition.
You don't?
Because, like you said, it's described as being a direct source in God.
Well, I mean, he literally uses the word secular as well. He says in the one above, he's identified in very diverse ways as an ecclesiastic, as a secular political figure, as Christ, as Dante himself. And so yeah, I guess they're just noting that the greyhound can represent like any, any form of this force.
Yeah.
Of change.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the interesting part is to note that the thing that it feeds on is wisdom, love, and virtue. Is it notes what you were saying, the kind of what were you relating it to, like how he doesn't consume earthly things.
Yeah, the hound will never feed on land or pewter.
Right, and that can be translated directly as like material goods and wealth.
Yeah.
And riches. So that also speaks to its nature. Oh, but you were trying to tie that into how it stands for revolution, and I mean, in a sense, it is kind of this, the turning of the wheel.
Well, yeah, like what is a society that is not founded in land or money? Like, that sounds like something that's communistic, right?
You mean the second part about one that it finds its fair
feed on land
finds its fair in wisdom, love, and virtue. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I suppose that is actually a potential